Donald Trump's press secretary, Karoline Levitt, held her first press briefing today, and it went about as well as the first few days of the Trump administration have. And by that, I mean it was an absolute disaster that increasingly got worse and more difficult to watch because after scandal after scandal after scandal, the Trump administration is unable to defend their indefensible actions, which there are a litany of, so much so that Karoline Levitt just kind of ended up running away when she was confronted with the biggest scandal that everyone is talking about. And we are going to get into that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really means the world to me. Now, before we get into the clip that made Karoline Levitt just run away, I want to check out her being grilled by Caitlin Collins over the firing of inspector generals.
One, on the freeze in federal funding, who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
And all that happened on Friday night. The administration fired several inspectors general without giving Congress the 30-day legally required notification that they were being fired. I think only 2 were left at DHS and the DOJ. And then yesterday we saw several prosecutors, I believe 12, fired from the Justice Department who worked on the investigations into the president. As you know, they are career prosecutors, therefore they are afforded civil service protections. How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
So it is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch, and therefore he has the power to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to. There's also a case that went before the Supreme Court in 2020, Scala Law LLC versus the Customs, Bureau protection. I would advise you to look at that case, and that's the legality that this White House was resting on.
So you're confident that if they bring lawsuits against you, those prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed?
We will win in court,
and
yes.
Did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation and the election interference investigation?
This was a memo that went out by the Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House, so yes. Yes, Karoline.
Much like Trump and any of his MAGA cultists, any of his MAGA defenders, these people do not have answers for why Donald Trump does anything, really, at this point. Nothing is in line with what they cared about on the campaign trail. Nothing is in line with the values that Donald Trump claims to have. I can't even get through that without laughing, but I've seen so many Republican members of Congress, Susan Collins, one of them, saying, well, why would Donald Trump do this? Why would he fire these people? He's violating the law. These people oversee making sure there is no waste in government. Well, why would Donald Trump do that? How gullible are you? This guy is trying to consolidate power and humiliate his party while doing it in the most illegal and unconstitutional ways, and he's going to lie as an explanation through all of it. And speaking of lies, take a look at what Karoline Levitt had to say right here.
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job. And I will say it's very easy to speak truth from this podium when you have a president who is implementing policies that are wildly popular with the American people, and that's exactly what this administration is doing.
Karoline, I hate to break this to you, but if you tell the truth, you'll be fired by the end of the day. No one in MAGA can tell the truth, knows how to tell the truth, is willing to tell the truth. That's certainly the case. And so, yeah, your time will be pretty short-lived if you attempt to. I don't foresee that actually being the case, especially because that right there was the first lie, that she was going to tell the truth, and that Donald Trump does as well. But one of the most egregious, the one that I wanted to check out, is what happened when Karoline Levitt was asked about the skyrocketing price of eggs, what has become this big scandal of the Trump administration. Her response was exactly what you'd expect.
Country and America is back. Christian Dayton.
Thanks, Karoline. Just real quick, you mentioned the inflation executive order the president signed, but egg prices have skyrocketed since President Trump took office. So what specifically is he doing to lower those costs for Americans?
Really glad you brought this up. because there is a lot of reporting out there that is putting the onus on this White House for the increased cost of eggs. I would like to point out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office, or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration. As far as the egg shortage, what's also contributing to that is that the Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens, which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply, which is leading to the shortage. So I will leave you with this point. This is an example of why it's so incredibly important that the Senate moves swiftly to confirm all of President Trump's nominees, including his nominee for the United States Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who is already speaking with Kevin Hassett, who's leading the economic team here at the White House, on how we can address the egg shortage in this country. As for costs, I laid out the plethora of ways that President Trump has addressed saving costs for the American people over the past week. He looks forward to continuing to doing that in the days ahead. Thank you.
I honestly expect this to be a consistent theme of the Trump administration going forward, not only blaming President Biden for all of their problems, and they'll do it years and years in. By the end, they'll still be blaming President Biden for leaving them, a booming economy, a relatively stable world, a more secure border than it was at many points during the first Trump administration. This is what they're going to do, saying that it's Joe Biden's fault. But as you saw, she did not have an answer, had to run away, didn't want to address the one thing that they claim to have cared about during the entire campaign, the cost of groceries, specifically the cost of eggs. She just had to go away. And on top of the lies about how President Biden and Vice President Harris left the country, I also expect for them to be claiming a lot of credit for their successes, which is going to be pretty difficult, but I don't know how they're going to have those successes to claim if they keep ripping our government apart, which is exactly what Donald Trump did last night with an executive action that Chuck Schumer absolutely went off on him for in this clip right here.
Last night, President Trump plunged the country into chaos. Without a shred of warning, the Trump administration announced a halt to virtually all federal funds across the country. In an instant, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that directly support states, cities, towns, schools, hospitals, small businesses, and most of all, American families. This is a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. It is just outrageous. Funds for things like disaster assistance, local law enforcement, rural hospitals, aid to the elderly, food for people in need, all are on the chopping block in this new administration. Why? They need tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy, and these cuts, they think, will fund them. Every one of our offices has been deluged with calls from people who are in panic. What is this going to mean? What if I have a hospital that has people on life support? What are we going to do? And just like the January 6th pardons, this decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel.
There was a lot that came out of Donald Trump's freezing of federal aid last night. Thousands of organizations confused with whether they could go forward with business as usual, whether they could feed people, whether they could oversee departments, whether people would have health care. 72 million people on Medicaid have their health care frozen right now. And Karoline Levitt is refusing to answer questions about that during her press conference because, of course, they don't really care. They don't. And they're going to make the wildest excuses for why they don't. Like, take a listen to what this Republican congressman had to say right here.
Would you support getting rid of, school lunch for vulnerable kids and breakfast and Head Start, for example, and getting rid of childhood cancer research. Do you support that? And what do you say to your constituents? I want to follow up on that question too, because I didn't hear an answer from you.
Sure. So I'm an ER doc, and I know that philanthropy is where you get most of your money for childhood cancer research, for example. And it's not just I mean, you look at what the president just proposed, a $500 billion spending bill on AI to produce cancer early detection in the first stage on most body parts. That's his spending bill where he wants to increase cancer research. So it's just about what part of the money it comes out of. When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home instead of going to work at Burger King and McDonald's during the summer should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review.
I think you're painting a
Think
lot
about
of these
where
kids
kids
with a
need to
broad
actually
brush.
be.
I would say that's not necessarily a fair assessment of all of the kids. So you would.
Is this seriously the point that we are at with the Trump administration? Not even the Trump administration. Is this the point that we're at with the Republican Party? Is this what they've become? Are they so cozied up to their millionaire, but really billionaire friends that they're fear-mongering against a middle school student, an elementary school student, having a free hot lunch, a free breakfast? That's the big boogeyman that you're scared of? Kids not starving at schools? So you're saying that a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, 11, 10, 9, 8, a 6-year-old should have to clock in a couple of shifts a week so they can have food? Is that what these people are saying? Is that the platform of the Republican Party? Because it sure feels like it at this point. And honestly, I think we need to make sure that everyone is seeing clips like this, because this perfectly encapsulates who Republicans are, but also who they think they are. It's a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, quote unquote, mentality. But at the same time, they're giving billions of dollars to Elon Musk risk-free for him to pull himself up by his bootstraps with his companies that are all built off federal subsidies. So it's corporate communism, but if you're a little kid who wants a little lunch, go clock in. Pay your own way. It's ridiculous, and we got to keep calling it out, and we're going to on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.